I breathed a sigh of relief and pressed the send button, barely able to contain the trembling in my fingers. The letter asking for a vacation addressed to my boss disappeared on the World Wide Web, taking with it the tension of the last weeks, months, and to be honest, the whole 3 years that have passed since I last allowed myself the luxury. A real vacation, not those dreary weekends spent in pajamas at a laptop with an unfinished presentation, but a real vacation where the air smells like the sea, the skin is burned by the sun, and the main concern of the day is the choice between mojito and piña colada. And before we continue, write in the comments from which city you are watching this video. Enjoy watching. My name is Bianca. I am 32 years old, and I have put all my energy, all my passion, and every grain of patience into this ruthless climb up the career ladder in the client operations department of our company, where endless Zooms, blinding presentations, and customer whims have long replaced personal life, friendly evenings, and even the usual walks without a phone in hand. Last month, I was finally promoted to senior account manager, a milestone I dreamed of reaching 2 years ago, and now, after months of continuous stress, I could finally breathe easy, like a person who ran a marathon and reached the finish line. For 10 whole days, I whispered, smiling to myself as the mouse slid across the laptop screen, stopping at golden photographs of coasts from the Maldives to Barbados, where sand is falling between my toes, the sun is lazily setting, and the most important question is which hat to wear with a new swimsuit. The thought of this, the absence of cases, deadlines, and meetings, caused a pleasant, almost forgotten excitement in my stomach, which almost made me laugh out loud. The romance of dreams was rudely interrupted by a sharp vibrating phone signal. On the screen is the predictable weekly message from Mom: family dinner tomorrow at 1700 hours. Don't be late. No dots, no emoticons, a strict directive, just like every time. Our Sunday dinners at our parents' house were a sacred tradition that knew no exceptions. Even illness, traffic jams, or work accidents did not become a valid reason for absence. Mom and Dad kept us together with jewelry persistence, 3 grown children with already overgrown families and destinies, stubbornly reminding us that family is not an event, but a daily effort. To be honest, despite the constant chaos that reigned at these dinners due to the 5 children rushing around the house with the wild energy of small hurricanes, it was nice to see everyone again, even if only for a couple of hours. The next day, a little after noon, I drove up to my parents' house, parking behind my brother Raphael's old minivan. Already from the street, I could hear screeching and joyful noise coming out of the slightly open window. Children, adults, a TV, and, possibly, a mixer in the kitchen. My younger sister Daphne's SUV was parked on the roadway, all covered with car seats, with the trunk open, from which children's balls, clubs, and some kind of obviously broken scooter were sticking out. As soon as I crossed the threshold, my mother rushed to me, hugging me with such force, as if I had returned from the army instead of coming to a weekly meeting. "Here she is," she exclaimed, turning to the others. We were just discussing plans for the summer. Raphael waved at me from behind the sofa, trying his best to sit his youngest son Mattia, who was jumping on the pillows with the frenzy of a monkey. His wife Alice, sitting in the corner, was having a tense conversation with Daphne's husband, Paul, about something, judging by the gestures, concerning the budget. "Bianca, grab Lino," Raphael shouted at me, noticing how his eldest son reached for the curtains, clearly intending to knock them to the floor. I barely had time to put my purse on the floor before I was recruited as a volunteer babysitter, which, however, has long been a familiar scenario. Raphael and Alice had 3 children, Lino, 7, Elm, 5, and the hyperactive Mattia, 3. Daphne has 2 children, Mimi, a 4-year-old girl with cunning eyes, and Phineas, a 2-year-old kid who is not yet talking, but is already commanding. And somehow, mysteriously, despite the fact that I was a single, childless sister, every time the whole family gathered, the functions of a babysitter, assistant, and full-time pacifier of children's riots fell on me. "Let him put them down," I muttered, still heading for Lino. "Maybe then you'll finally replace these disgusting things." "That's it, dinner is ready," Dad announced, coming in from the kitchen with a huge platter on which stood a perfect roast beef dripping with juice. The usual family dance began, seating the children, setting up drinking bowls, negotiating who would sit where, as if every meal turned into a UN diplomatic mission. When everyone was finally seated, the food was laid out, and the wine was poured into glasses, I decided to speak between two pieces of mashed potatoes. "I've finally taken a vacation," I announced, trying to keep my voice light. 10 days. It starts in 3 weeks. I'm thinking of going somewhere in the tropics. There was a moment of silence at the table, a rare moment when even the children froze for a moment before the whole room exploded into a chorus of remarks. "What are the numbers?" Dad asked, raising his eyebrows. "We were just talking about a family vacation this summer," Raphael interjected, leaning forward. "We are planning a trip to Florida. Children demand theme parks. It's going to be amazing. We should all go together." Mom clapped her hands as if she had heard a dream come true. "Bianca, you must come with us." I froze with a half-bite in my mouth, because this was not how I imagined my first vacation in many years, not surrounded by family, with the obligation to keep an eye on the children while everyone else was relaxing, not in queues at the slides, but alone, in silence, with a book in my hand and a full the lack of a schedule. I do not know, I hesitated, trying to find the words so as not to offend anyone. I was looking forward to being alone with myself. Daphne looked at me as if I'd suggested going on a vacation to Mars. Time alone? It sounds so depressing. Vacations need to be shared. Do you remember that trip to the mountains 4 years ago? Yes, I replied, already feeling the tension return. I spent the whole vacation chasing Raphael's kids while everyone else went camping. Alice intervened, with her usual soft, almost apologetic intonation, which nevertheless did not hide her underlying irritation. "The kids were younger then," she said, as if by doing so she wanted to justify the excesses of the past, to smooth out the uncomfortable truth that I, in fact, had to be a free babysitter while others enjoyed nature, views, and freedom. "They're still kids," I snapped, not hiding my sarcasm, and nodded towards Mattia, who just at that moment flipped his glass of juice onto the tablecloth with a flourish. Mom, who was sitting next to me, reached out to me and gently, motherly, stroked my hand. There was concern in her touch, but also a slight pressure, as if she wanted to say, "Get us right, daughter." "We're just worried that you're alone all the time," she said, and there was a note of that same endless parental anxiety in her voice that no logical argument could dispel. I straightened up and, raising my voice a little, answered, "I'm not always alone. I have friends, colleagues, and I don't live in isolation." But then, as if according to the script, Dad intervened. His baritone always sounded with a hint of final judgment. "Family is different," he said, pausing, as if drawing a line under my arguments. "Besides, when was the last time we all went out together?" "4 years ago," I repeated almost automatically, "when I started working as a full-time nanny." The silence that hung for a split second was interrupted by Raphael's dismissive sigh. "You're exaggerating," he waved off, pretending that I was dramatizing the situation, as usual. But I raised an eyebrow and, looking him straight in the eye, said, "Really?" "Because I clearly remember being stuck in the cabin with the kids while you and Alice were ziplining, then scuba diving, and I was giving Lino chamomile tea and comforting Elm, who missed her mom." "We promise it won't be like that this time," Daphne said quickly, her voice filled with energy and hope, and she hurriedly added, "We will take turns taking care of the children. You don't have to look after them at all if you don't want to. Seriously, Bianca, you don't even have to do anything. Just rest." I looked around at everyone sitting at the table, those faces, so dear, stubbornly beloved, even if sometimes tiresome, and saw on them a reflection of expectation, almost pleading. Even the children, without looking up from their food, caught my glances, not fully understanding the context, but clearly sensing that something important was at stake. "We've already looked at the hotels," Mom added enthusiastically. There is a beautiful resort in Clearwater Beach with pools, play areas, entertainment for children, a gym, and a spa. We have already booked tickets and rooms. We're leaving in 3 weeks, on Friday morning. You should get on the same flight. I sighed, trying not to show my mixed feelings, because there was something disturbing in each of them: the weight of responsibility, stifled resentment, fatigue from roles that I no longer wanted to play, but also something softer, as if warm, perhaps that they really want something. Then change it. As the evening dragged on, more and more details of the upcoming trip surfaced in conversations: the hotel, the ocean view, boat trips, a tour of the nature reserve, and each of the family members tried to contribute something of their own, as if asserting their participation, their interest, and, perhaps, their concern. I listened, but I was still hesitant. And yet, when we were washing the dishes, I said, without looking at my mother, who was carefully putting the plates in the dryer, "Okay. I'll book a ticket and a room when I get home." The cries of joy that came from behind me made me smile, even though I was still feeling uneasy inside. At home, I kicked off my shoes, flopped down on the couch, put my laptop on my lap, and started looking for tickets and rooms at the same resort. 2 hours later, after several unsuccessful attempts to find a suitable flight, I finally booked a room with an ocean view, in the same building as the family. But there was a problem with the flights. The one they were going to fly was already completely full. The most I could do was fly out the next day, on Saturday. I didn't get upset for long, considering it a small blessing, an opportunity to be alone with myself for at least one day before diving into the whirlpool of a family vacation. The next morning, on my way to work, I called my mom to tell her that I had booked the same hotel, just like you said. "But I didn't catch your flight. There was no departure." "I'll be there on Saturday." "Oh, what a pity," she said, and although she sounded sad, there wasn't a drop of real disappointment in her voice. "But the main thing is that you will be with us. We will definitely reserve a place on the beach for you." The next 3 weeks flew by quickly, between summarizing the results, closing tasks, handing over cases, and buying everything necessary for the vacation. I felt something inside me thawing, relaxing, as if allowing myself to believe that maybe everything would really turn out differently. And, oddly enough, neither Raphael nor Daphne asked me to look after the children during all this time. Not a single message asking to replace them for a couple of hours because of an unscheduled meeting, not a single sudden call with an offer. "Are you at home anyway? Can you sit with Mimi and Fina?" Nothing. There was silence on the nanny services front. Maybe they've really changed, I told myself one evening, as I carefully packed my swimwear into a suitcase, sorting through sundresses, sunglasses, and creams, and trying not to think about the past. This sudden thought was both refreshing, like a sip of cool water on a hot day, and suspicious, like an overly sweet compliment from a stranger. Over the 3 years that I've been a constant lifesaver for the whole family, I've learned to be skeptical of sudden behavioral changes. There was only a week left before departure, and I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of soothing tea, diligently making a list of things to pack, trying to be extremely attentive, as if the correctness of this list depended not just on the convenience of the trip, but on its whole essence: a high SPF sunscreen, a wide-brimmed hat with a blue ribbon, a couple of light beach novels, bought on the advice of a book blogger, chargers for a phone, tablet, and headphones, several evening dresses. All this was neatly written down in a notebook, next to notes about the time of departure, flight number, and hotel address. I felt a quiet anticipation spreading inside, almost like when I was a child before a trip to the sea, when every movement seemed to be the beginning of something new, bright, and truly mine. The phone lying next to me vibrated, at first softly, and then, as if it felt like I wasn't up to it, a second time, with a slightly more demanding tone. It was a notification from a messaging app. My gaze slid across the screen, and I saw that the message had come from Daphne. But as soon as I read the text in the preview, the blood seemed to drain from my face, leaving an icy sheet in its place. "Raphael, Bianca suspects nothing. She really believes us." I didn't open the message right away. My finger froze over the screen, and thoughts swirled in my head. What am I not suspecting? What kind of conspiracy is behind this phrase? And what exactly did I so naively believe? And while I was torn between the desire to find out the truth and the fear that it would turn out to be bitter, like undercooked coffee, a new notification appeared on the screen. This message was deleted. But it was too late. The instant reaction of the subconscious mind worked faster than fear. The finger had already pressed a key combination, and the screenshot was taken. I looked at the frozen text again. Bianca doesn't suspect anything. She actually believes us that we don't need to look after the kids. I can't believe she's fallen for that bait again. Mom and Dad are also fully supportive of this plan. While she's busy with the kids, we can all relax. That was the end of the message, but it was enough for me. Every word, like a carefully honed blade, stabbed into memories, into kind conversations, into promises, into the naive hope that I allowed myself after so many years of sacrifice. My family, my own flesh and blood, the people I had forgiven dozens of times, over and over again, planned to turn me into a free servant under the guise of a family vacation. At first, I felt a wave of anger, hot, bubbling, almost animalistic, such that I wanted to turn over this table and scatter all the neatly compiled lists on the floor. And then, as often happens after a storm, there was a strange calmness, not emptiness, but clarity, transparent and cold, like the morning air in the mountains. That's how it was supposed to be. They didn't even bother to come up with something new, deciding that I would take their words on faith again, as always. But this time I decided to play by their rules and make the first move. With cold determination, I picked up the phone, dialed the hotel number, and when I heard the on-duty hello, I said with extreme politeness, "I need to cancel my reservation. The confirmation number is B74N3Q. After a few minutes, everything was settled, and I hung up the phone. Then I called the airline, where the operator's voice offered a partial refund for canceling the flight to Florida, which I gladly agreed to. And I would like to book a new flight, please, I added after a pause. To Hawaii. Yes, on the same date, if possible. When all the logistical issues were resolved, I leaned back in my chair, and for the first time in a long time, a real, sincere, almost childish smile appeared on my face. Not bitter, not tired, but joyful, like a person who has finally made a choice in favor of himself. This time, I wasn't going to be the reliable, responsible Bianca who offered her shoulder, looked after other people's children so that others could relax, while forgetting that she needed rest, too. This time, I chose myself. As the days passed, the Saturday family dinner arrived, the last one before their departure. I came to my parents' house in my best form, with a strained but convincing smile, in a light dress and with a carefree gait. I was genuinely curious as to how deeply they were involved in their own deception. "Here's our traveler," Dad exclaimed, hugging me as if nothing had happened, and added, "Is everything packed and ready to ship to Florida?" "Almost," I replied with that easy playfulness that always baffled. "There are some small things left, some last-minute things." Raphael looked up from Mattia, who was wiping chocolate off his face, and noticed, children are looking forward to building sand castles with their beloved aunt. I noticed the look he exchanged with Alice, quick, meaningful, the one that I would not have noticed before, but now I caught it with the precision of a hunter. "I'm looking forward to it too," I replied, mirroring his fake enthusiasm with my own, as if we were both playing roles in a play where everyone knew the ending would be different. During dinner, I watched them, not with reproach, but with interest, as one watches actors in a play that you have already seen once, but did not know what the outcome would be. Conspiratorial glances, fleeting smiles, carelessly thrown comments, all this betrayed how deeply they were sure that they had fooled me again. And each such moment only strengthened my resolve. When the evening came to an end, I said goodbye to them at the door, hugging everyone in turn and promising, "See you in Florida." They had no idea that I wouldn't be there. It was Friday, their departure day, and my phone started filling up with messages. "We just moved in. The hotel is magnificent. The beach is amazing," Mom wrote. "We look forward to seeing you tomorrow. The kids are asking when Aunt Bianca is coming, Daphne added with a couple of hearts. I replied with a single icon, a smiling smiley face, and, without wasting a second, I closed my suitcase with the most necessary things for a vacation in Hawaii. Saturday morning turned out to be clear and bright. The sky sparkled with some kind of unearthly blue, as if Providence itself had decided to bless my escape from the eternal debt in which I had been drowning for years, and I, without pausing, slammed the apartment door, listened to the short click of the lock, wheeled my suitcase into a waiting taxi and, without turning around, headed for airport. Not to where other people's plans were waiting for me, not to Florida, where beaches were a backdrop for children's screams and the redistribution of parental responsibilities, but to paradise, my own paradise, where I was free from all expectations and scenarios, where no one was going to turn me into a free babysitter with a deceptive smile on my face and with false assurances of love. As the plane took off, breaking through the clouds and taking me further and further away from the imposed roles, I switched my phone to flight mode, took a deep breath, leaned back in my seat and felt a weight slowly but surely lift off my shoulders, the very weight that I had been carrying with me for so long without realizing how much she distorted my gait, my voice, even my breathing. For the first time in many years, I was doing something exclusively for myself, without looking back, without checking my family schedule, without explaining myself or making excuses to those who have long been accustomed to considering my time as a common resource. The flight to Hawaii was long, but calm. I read, dozed, looked out the window, dreaming of white sand beaches, warm water, the scent of coconut oil and the rustle of palm trees, and each such thought became another brick in the foundation of my new vacation, where I was the main character, not a character. The second plan in someone else's play. When we finally landed, the sun was already setting, and the air greeted me with a gentle, enveloping warmth mixed with a light sea breeze and the faint scent of plumeria, as if nature itself had decided to become the co-author of my release. My hotel turned out to be the exact embodiment of everything that was promised on the website: snow-white buildings surrounded by lush tropical greenery, a pool reflecting the sky like a mirror, and a long strip of beach where the sand was soft as powdered sugar. "Welcome," the receptionist said in a Hawaiian accent, handing me a room key with a floral pendant. "Is this your first time here?" "That's right," I replied with a sincere smile. "And, I have a feeling that this will not be the last time." I didn't even begin to unpack my suitcase. 20 minutes later I was already in a swimsuit, flip-flops, and with a towel under my arm, heading to the beach, where the golden light of sunset caressed the water, and the rare vacationers enjoyed the silence, not disturbed by either children's cries or reproaches. I stretched out on the sunbed, letting the warm sun penetrate into every cell of my body, and for the first time in a long time, I felt not only the tension coming off me, but also the roles imposed over the years: a good daughter, a caring aunt, an eternal helper. A few hours later, slightly tired and a little burned, but happy and relaxed, I returned to the room, took a cool shower, put on a light bathrobe and turned on my phone, preparing for what was happening there. As expected, the screen exploded with notifications, dozens of missed calls, voice messages, text storms. "Bianca, where are you?" is the first message from Mom. "Your flight was supposed to land a few hours ago." "We're at the airport." "Did you miss your flight?" "Answer me." Next came panicked messages from Daphne, and then Raphael. "Where are you?" "The children are waiting." "Mimi is upset." "Lino can't find her molds without you." Smiling, I typed a short reply into the family chat: "I'm having a great time in Hawaii. Please don't disturb my rest. I'll see you when I get back." I pressed send, turned off my phone and, curling up under a cool sheet, fell asleep to the sound of the ocean, in silence, where there was no place for baby crying or other people's expectations. The morning didn't start with screams, fuss, or a ringing phone, but with silence so thick and peaceful that I didn't even open my eyes right away. I just listened to the soft lapping of waves and the melodious chirping of birds outside the window. Stretching, I looked around the spacious room, where order reigned. No one poured, demanded, or cried, and only after a good half-hour I picked up the phone with a sigh of satisfaction, already knowing that it would show. 37 missed calls, dozens of messages, and a couple of voicemails that started with an offended Bianca, which is no longer funny, and ended with a hysterical "how could you do that?" All this flashed before my eyes, but none of them aroused the desire to answer. I was no longer the one who had to make excuses. But when my mom called again, at the very moment when I was drinking my morning coffee on the balcony overlooking the ocean, I decided to answer anyway. "Bianca," her voice rang with tension, anger, and maybe surprise. "What are you doing?" "Good morning to you, too, Mom," I replied calmly, taking a leisurely sip from my cup. "I'm enjoying my vacation in Hawaii." "This is completely unacceptable." "Stop it," she screamed, and I heard a door slam somewhere nearby. "You ruined our family vacation. Your brother and sister are furious. The kids are asking where you are." "Let me interrupt you right away," I said, keeping my tone even, as if I were conducting a business meeting. "I know about the plan." There was a pause on the other end, and then Mom spoke again, but her voice was different, uncertain, and shaky. "What's the plan?" "The plan is to use me as a free babysitter while you all have fun," I said clearly. "Daphne accidentally sent me a message addressed to Raphael." I saw everything. There was another silence, longer and heavier, and then a sigh, in which there was both fatigue and, perhaps, a tiny shadow of guilt. "You're exaggerating," Mom finally said, but without the same confidence. "We just didn't want to load you with unnecessary details in advance." "Is it really that terrible?" "In detail?" I asked, and there was a joyless laugh in my voice, so detached that even I felt uneasy. "You mean the part where I'll be stuck looking after 5 kids again while everyone else drinks margaritas by the pool and complains about how tired they are of parenthood?" "It's not a detail, Mom. It's the same thing again, using me for your own purposes, and the worst part is that you haven't even bothered to admit it honestly." There was a pause on the other end of the line, but not for long. "You're lonely and childless, Bianca." Mom's voice became stricter, as if she had switched to the rails of maternal guidance, where a strict note always hid faith in her infallible right to the truth. "You have to understand how hard it is for Raphael and Daphne. They're tired, they're exhausted, they deserve a break." I felt my fingers tighten on the phone case, my knuckles turned white, and a familiar wave of anger rose inside. Not a flash, no, but a slowly growing indignation, as if somewhere deep inside me water was boiling in a tightly closed kettle. I asked, trying to speak evenly, without shouting, but my voice was shaking with the effort. "I deserve a break too. I work non-stop, without vacations, without favors for 3 years to get this promotion. I didn't ask anyone to make my way easier, but that doesn't mean I have to compensate for other people's choices. My responsibilities do not include raising other people's children, even if these children are my nephews and nieces. I didn't win them up. I didn't sign up for it." Mom sighed, and I already knew what she was going to say. "Family helps family," she began, as if reciting a phrase from the family code. "No, Mom," I interrupted firmly. "What you are describing is not help. This is exploitation. This is the imposition of other people's duties under the guise of kinship feelings. And the most disgusting thing about it all is the conspiracy. The fact that you planned everything in advance, hid it from me, and took advantage of my kindness and trustfulness. It's a betrayal. You betrayed my trust. You did it collectively." "You're just being dramatic," she said, and I heard the lighter click, which meant Mom had taken out a cigarette again, even though the doctors had told her to quit. "And me? I couldn't stand it. Do you think I have no right to emotions? From my point of view, my whole family conspired to ruin my vacation, my first vacation in 3 years, by luring me with false promises, and now I'm a playwright? Is that what you call insignificant?" "It seems to me, Mom, very significant." "Bianca, I'm not going to talk about this anymore," I said, finding the firmness I could only dream of before. "I'm going to enjoy my vacation. A real vacation." Without you. Without responsibilities that you have no right to impose on me. If I want, we can talk about it when I get back. But not now. Don't you dare hang up on me, young lady, she said sharply, but I had already taken the phone away from my ear, pressed end, and, just in case, blocked the numbers of all family members. My hands were shaking, my palms were wet from exertion, but for the first time in a long time, a strange feeling of freedom settled in my chest, as if I had torn off an old, worn-out shell and could now breathe deeply. The rest of the day was spent in bliss. I swam with a mask along the coral reef, watching the fish, whose carelessness was contagious, then lazily returned to the pool, where I happily immersed myself in a vulgar novel with a predictable plot and a beautiful hero, and in the evening I allowed myself a glass of white wine with a view of the sunset, feeling like every moment it brings back the Bianca I almost lost. And not once during the whole day did I have to cut someone's food, wipe away a runny nose, or persuade the children to share toys. Later, in my room, I unlocked the family rooms, curious to see what other lines of their drama I would have to read. There were a lot of messages, and as I expected, they were all variations on the same theme. I'm selfish, I ruined everyone's vacation, I framed the kids, I had to. But one message from Raphael particularly hurt. The children don't stop whining, and Alice and I can't enjoy a single minute alone. It's all your fault. I couldn't help but laugh, soft, bitter, but liberating. That's all. Finally, that was the real reason, not the love of family, not the desire to spend time together, but a simple, convenient calculation, so that I, as always, would lend a shoulder while they rest. It was written in black and white. For the rest of the week, I was in a state of absolute peace. I went to the waterfalls, stood under their noise, as if in a cleansing stream, flew in a helicopter over the island, where the green slopes competed in beauty with the ocean blue, learned to get on a surfboard under the guidance of a patient instructor named Kai, and spent my evenings on the beach, listening to the sound of the surf and allowing myself to be just myself, not someone's aunt, daughter, or sister, but a woman who knows her own worth. Every evening, however, I opened the messages, and was surprised to see how their tone changed from furious accusations to attempts at reconciliation. Mom wrote a long letter in which she admitted that they should have been more honest, that they had overreacted. Dad left a voicemail saying, in a restrained but clearly sad voice, that I had missed Sunday dinner. Even Raphael sent a dry but nevertheless apologetic letter, in which, however, he complained again about how difficult it was with the children, without extra hands. When the last day came, I packed my things in a suitcase with a feeling of slight sadness, because I really felt good in this place, and with feelings that could hardly be described in one word. It was a mixture of determination, peace, and quiet satisfaction. I drew the line. I said no. This caused a conflict, but in this conflict, I finally stood on my side. The flight home became a time of reflection, and I couldn't help but wonder, would I be able to re-enter the family without becoming their lifeline again? Should I go back to my old relationship at all, or is it time to start a new one? And yet, none of the extreme options seemed right. Maybe the solution lay somewhere in the middle. When my plane landed and I turned on my phone again, new notifications immediately caught my eye, messages gathered in anticipation, like impatient spectators before the curtain opens. The first one was from my mom. We'll all come to you tomorrow. We need to talk. Please give us the opportunity to apologize in person. The children missed their Aunt Bianca. I smiled grimly as I swiped my finger across the screen. Oddly enough, it was at that moment that it finally dawned on me how much they still didn't understand, how far they were from the essence of what had happened, how much they lacked honesty, not only in words, but also in understanding how systematically they ignored me as a person, as an adult with my own living space and the right to freedom. It wasn't about missing out on a vacation or refusing to babysit for a couple of hours, no, it was about something else, about the years when I was taken for granted, when my time and efforts were considered less valuable just because I didn't have my own children, which means she was automatically free. Back at the apartment, I slowly unpacked my things, allowing myself to savor every moment, the smell of sea salt on my clothes, the sand sticking to my flip-flops, the postcards I bought as a keepsake. All this reminded me that I had not just moved away from something, but had finally taken a step towards myself. And even the thought of tomorrow's meeting didn't cause the same anxious itch in my chest. For the first time in my adult life, I wasn't afraid of conflict with my family. I wasn't trying to avoid it. I wasn't fawning. I wasn't looking for compromises where I wasn't visible at all. I had found my voice, and now I wasn't going to give it up. The next day, exactly on schedule, as predicted by the messages, the doorbell rang. I looked through the peephole and saw my parents, Raphael and Daphne, standing in the hallway, gloomy and tired, as if all the energy of the vacation had drained out of them, leaving no trace. Neither Alice, nor Paul, nor even the children came, only the bases, the very part of the family with whom, apparently, there was a need to talk. I took a deep breath and opened the door, but only enough so that the chain would allow the symbolic and physical boundary between me and them. "Bianca, please," Mom said, her voice quieter than usual, even softer, as if she knew that the volume could be the last straw right now. "We just want to talk." I stood up straight, not hiding, but not opening up either, and said, "I'm not sure I'm ready. For many years, you have treated me like a free labor force. My time doesn't matter. My plans are secondary. Is it because I don't have children?" "That's not true," Daphne muttered, avoiding my gaze. "Really?" I took out my phone and, without hesitation, opened the screenshot of that very message. "This suggests the opposite." They froze. The faces fell, as if for the first time they realized the scale of what they had done. Raphael muttered something under his breath. Daphne turned away, her cheeks flushed with shame, and her mother froze, clearly trying to regain control of the situation. "You and I have a serious problem," she said, and there was a strange mixture of annoyance and reproach in her voice. "You should feel guilty for what you did." I couldn't believe my ears and laughed, not loudly, but so that they would understand that this time it would not be possible to turn everything upside down. "Are you serious? Are you the ones who lied to me, manipulated me, used my trust, and now you want me to feel guilty?" "But you deliberately misled us," Dad intervened. "For the first time in the conversation, we were very worried when you didn't show up in Florida." I held back a smile. "I've studied with the best," I replied coldly, "and to be honest, it seems to me that a little clarity in your relationship with me is not such a bad thing. Look, I'm not going to stand here and argue in the doorway. I need time. Space." "Space?" Mom looked startled, as if the word was unfamiliar to her. "From your family?" "Bianca, this is ridiculous." "What's funny," I said in a flat voice, "is that you're still trying to make me look bad. I'm tired of being comfortable. I'm tired of being treated like someone second-rate because I'm not married and I don't have children." "We never said that," Raphael said hastily. "You didn't have to say that," I replied. "You showed it with every action. Every time you left the kids at my place without warning. Every time you made plans, you were sure that I wasn't going anywhere. Every time I said no, and you pretended you didn't hear. And then this." I picked up the phone again. That was the last straw. They exchanged awkward glances. None of them seemed to know what to say, for the first time, perhaps, in our entire family history. "Bianca, please." Mom tried again. "Let's go in, we'll sort this out." I shook my head. "Not today. I'll decide when and if I'm ready to talk. Right now, I just need you to respect my decision." With that, I slowly but firmly closed the door, ignoring the whispers coming from the other side. 10 minutes later, I heard their footsteps retreating down the hallway. And there was silence. The following weeks were surprisingly calm. I returned to work, immersed myself in new projects, went to meetings with friends in the evenings, went on weekends to neighboring cities, staying in small hotels with wooden verandas, where in the morning it smelled of coffee and the sun. And, most importantly, no fuss, no sudden request for help, no guilt over missing Sunday dinners, no fatigue from eternal self-sacrifice. At first, my phone was littered with messages, scattered, sometimes hasty and clumsy, as if they hoped that apologies, typed in haste and without proper thought, could erase years of silence, silent expectations, and unspoken reproaches. They kept slipping through notes of excuses, attempts to downplay what had happened, hints that I might be overreacting, and sometimes even open attempts to shift the blame onto me. They say, I didn't articulate my boundaries clearly enough, I didn't refuse confidently enough, and anyway, they thought that I was myself. I don't mind. I read them all without missing a single letter, let every word pass through me, but didn't answer any of them, leaving them hanging in the air like unfinished sentences. It was only after 3 weeks of my stubborn silence, when they probably realized that the old methods no longer worked, that the tone began to change. First, a courier rang the doorbell with a bouquet of lilies and a postcard from Raphael. Inside, handwritten, there was only one short but seemingly honest message: I'm truly sorry that I took you for granted. No expectations. I'm just sorry. A few days later, I received a letter, a real one, paper, written in ink, with a handwriting that I immediately recognized: Daphne. She admitted that she was selfish, that she never thought about what it would be like to be the one everyone goes to when they need to, who is always there, but never in the center. And she added that now she sees that it was unfair. But perhaps the most amazing changes happened to my parents. Instead of, as usual, rebuking and demanding to return to the family, they sent one concise message: we miss you, but we understand that you need time. We'll be there when you're ready. We respect your decision. It was so unlike them that it took me a few minutes to believe my eyes. And, frankly, I almost dialed the number to hear their voices. But she restrained herself. Because I understood that this is not a story about a single vacation. This is not a quarrel that can be covered up with flowers. This is the beginning of a restructuring of the entire family dynamic, a rethinking of the role that I had grown into without noticing how it began to bind me. One evening, sitting on the balcony with a glass of tart wine and watching the sky turn into the peach gold shades of sunset, I thought how much had changed. For years in a row, I lived in a role that everyone was used to: reliable Bianca, already Bianca, our Bianca, who would always help. It was only now that I realized how scary it was, but it was necessary to free myself from this imposed identity. At that moment, my phone vibrated again. It was Mom. The message was simple, unadorned, and strikingly honest. My father and I talked a lot about how we treated you. We're so sorry, Bianca. We never wanted you to feel less important because you don't have children. Your life and your time are just as important as Raphael's or Daphne's. We understand this now. I felt tears coming to my eyes. Not out of resentment, but out of relief, as if someone had finally seen me for real, not as a function, not as a resource, but as a person with desires, with a tired soul that had needed recognition for so long. And more importantly, the ability to defend my interests has changed not only my position in the family, but also myself. I began to treat myself and my work differently. I no longer stayed late, did not take on other people's responsibilities if I could not cope with my own, and began to confidently express ideas at meetings without fear of being ridiculed or ignored. That weekend, I drove past my parents' house at the exact time when Sunday dinners usually took place. I didn't stop, didn't go in, didn't slow down. But I felt a slight twinge of nostalgia, strangely intertwined with anxiety. Despite everything, despite the pain, I still felt like a part of this family. A week later, I finally gathered my resolve and replied to my mother's message: I appreciate your apologies. I'm not ready for Sunday dinner yet, but maybe we could meet for a cup of coffee this weekend. Just you and me. Her answer came almost immediately. Name the time and place. I'll be there. When we met, everything was awkward at first. The silence was as thick as syrup, both of them avoided glances, and words were difficult to come by. But step by step, topic by topic, we found a way to have a conversation that we both needed. Mom confessed that she and Dad really used me. It seemed natural to them, but now they see how wrong they were. "We miss you," she said, and her eyes clouded, "but we understand that you need to change something." I sighed. "I miss you too. But I'm not going back to the way it was before." "We don't want that either," she said firmly. "Raphael and Daphne have already found nannies. They get paid themselves. They're not waiting for you." 2 months later, I finally agreed to go to Sunday dinner again. I went there with some misgivings, but the atmosphere from the first minutes turned out to be different, calm, respectful, and even the children seemed somehow quieter. Raphael and Alice looked after their offspring, without shifting even a passing responsibility to me. And Daphne, coming up with a plate, asked quietly, "Bianca, do you mind helping Noah with lunch?" She asked. I didn't guess. She didn't impose it. It wasn't perfect. But it was progress. And as I drove home that evening, passing through familiar streets with a new sense of calm, I realized that sometimes, in order to build something solid, you first have to let something break. Our family was beginning to heal. And more importantly, I was finally treated as an equal. Write a comment on what you think about this story and don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like it. See you soon.